You're listening to The Manning Report with your host, James David Manning. The news behind the headlines.
Leader of the Senate, Mitch MCConnell, said that he has two things in common with Obama. Number one, that he's against reparations, and number two, that both of their ancestors were slave owners. Now, Mitch MCConnell is saying that Obama's parents or ancestors were slave owners. Why? Because Obama's got deep white roots, deep enough to be traced back to slave ownership. So Obama was a phony. He wasn't the first black president. He may be the first president who we know their parents owned slaves. But Mr. Engineer, Cory Booker is asked by Don Lemon on this whole matter. Mr. Engineer, roll that clip if you will, please.
The Senate Majority Leader Mitch MCConnell was asked today about an NBC report that said that his relatives were slaveholders and whether that would change his view against reparations. Listen to his response.
You know, I find myself once again in the same position as President Obama. We both oppose reparations, and we both are the descendants of slaveholders.
How do you respond to that?
You know, I mean, Mitch MCConnell doesn't seem to even in any way there express an understanding of these issues, or, you know, the bill that I have in the Senate, which would call people together to study this issue, the legacy of slavery.
Let me just ask you there before you go, because I know, and I'm going to let you talk about that. I rarely have seen you at a loss for words. Why are you at a loss for words over this, over that response?
I mean, first of all, I didn't hear this earlier today, so this is the first time I'm responding. And dear God, this has been a couple years of my life from Mitch MCConnell to Donald Trump, where things come out of their mouth that I just sometimes have to have to just take a step back for a second and gather myself.
You know, how Don Lemon, he's a Hamite brother. How do we now? And you know, I did not talk about Obama's parents being slave owners, ancestry, during my campaign against Obama. I did talk about his being related to Dick Cheney, and that he was not black, or at least he wasn't wholly black, and his prominence and eminence was from a white source. But I wonder, you know, how this Hamite community, or the African American or black community, is going to respond to this, that Obama's parents were slave owners, you know? And the thing about Obama is that he could not receive reparations, and that maybe that's why he's against reparation, because he heard me say so loudly years ago that he's ineligible for reparation because his parents were not slaves but slave owners, and that he cannot trace his ancestry to slaves in America. But you know, the same thing is true with Kamala Harris. And Al Sharpton and a bunch of other Hamite or African American people are pushing Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg to be president and vice president. You're listening to the Manning Report, everybody. I'm going to take a break, and I'll be right back with more of the Manning Report.